All right, organization. So this is an extension of creative analysis, as is so often the case. We are still thinking about Hamlet's figurative language and the points that he keeps making with ambiguity. That's the task. Of course, organization is going to be the formal task. So let's take a look at what that is. All right, ambiguity. This is the rubric from the AP graders, and I'm just offering this for you to see that there is an expectation for the highest level commentary that you will naturally discuss multiple literary elements or techniques. It's the language they use. They aren't counting them. They say multiple. They are just expecting that in order to explore what something means deeply, you will pay attention to how it is said. And I know you're doing this already. But this also to me says that they're hoping that you name those literary elements and techniques, embedding them into your language and your analysis. So you'll be saying things like the metaphors here show that, or the simile here reveals something. And that will show a really sophisticated understanding of the literary elements at play. And so this week we're doing that very intentionally because I'm asking you to incorporate figurative language into your claims analysis. All right, so here's what we're doing. This is really back to Sunday, the creative analysis. We're developing commentary that establishes relationships between the evidence, the commentary, and then the claim. It's a thesis here in the language, but it's a claim for the paragraph. And then I'm offering that the more sophisticated literary arguments offer multiple interpretations, and they explain the interpretations by evaluating lit techniques. I've linked here the glossary of all of the lit terms that I've seen on the AP Lit exam. It's yours to have. I don't necessarily recommend that you go through with a set of flashcards and you memorize them all. I think that what you really want to do is internalize the ones that you've seen the most and the ones that you have the most comfort with and be ready to evaluate them. It's a multi-page document that includes a lot of poetic terms as well. And that will be helpful when we do our poetry unit. Okay, so what are we doing? Crafting an excellent claim paragraph that notices some ambiguity, some point Hamlet is making by virtue of his clever use of figurative language. This is the same as Sundays, so in many ways you can just use that. You address textual evidence and analyze what does he seem to be saying here, and then what is the larger conflict tied to that bit of his figurative language. This week, you are, for the organization paragraph that is, you are to write a strong quote-embedded claim paragraph where you declare the point that Hamlet is making about humanity or about specific people and reveal how his figurative language imbues the point with ambiguity. Imagine this as a body paragraph where you explore implications of figurative language. What point is he making? You decide. He has so many philosophies that he declares and points that he wants to make about people that he sees. And what figurative language, you decide that as well. You could start with what you found on Sunday and build from there, and that's what I'll do in my Think Aloud here. First, though, what it is not. So here's two claims. The first, in the play, Shakespeare shows what Hamlet is thinking and feeling through a heavy use of metaphor. The second, in the play, Hamlet uses metaphors, specifically metonymy, to illustrate his dismay that royalty, which he believed to be an anointed divine state, is part and parcel of the typical human desire for power. No one is safe. So which is better? Which is the better claim? And it's the second one, but it's not just because it's longer and there's more in it. It's because in the first one, the figurative language is the end. It's the only thing I'm interested in finding. If I do that, I am going to find myself just having run out of things to say. Once I've found a metaphor and explained what it means, what am I doing that for? What's the point? It's hard to find them. The figurative language is always the means to the end, not the end itself. And so I have to find somewhere it's going. In the second claim, I incorporate metaphor, just as the first wanted to do, but it's the means to the point, which is here his dismay about royalty, his really confusing feelings about what it means to be anointed as a king or prince, and how it doesn't actually mean that much for him anymore. I've seen this mistake a number of times, and it looks something like this. It's when a student will say, okay, I want to put figurative language in here, so I'm going to write a 5-paragraph essay on this exam, and the middle paragraphs are going to be about metaphor, and then personification, and then simile. And it's too thin. There's not much to say. Those are just the means to get to the ideas. So making sure your claims, while they might incorporate the figurative language into their sentence, that they're really about the idea, something from the text. Okay, so I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking about my creative analysis. Now, this is my think aloud. This is me trying to find my analysis paragraph. In my creative analysis, I had this great pun that I found. And I've figured out something about that. I think it's revealing bitterness in Hamlet, mistrust. He can't even talk to his mom and his uncle without turning to the side and saying something snide. So it's interesting to me. I want to find more examples like that so I can figure out what's going on with Hamlet. And I find one almost immediately after, when Claudius says, "You look pale, you've been in grief too long." And Hamlet says, "No, I'm too much in the sun." There's another pun, because he's talking about how his sonship, the fact that he's this son, is weighing on his shoulders. First, he's a son to this dead king, who he feels he owes something to, and now he's a son to his uncle, which is very confusing, even before he finds out his uncle murdered his dad. So I have two puns that show that he really is mistrustful of the people closest to him in his life. And then there's another pun I found, that it's in a conversation with Polonius, and he knows Polonius really well, his dad's trusted advisor. But the way he talks to Polonius, you would think he has nothing but antagonism for this man. He grew up with Laertes and Ophelia. I'm sure they all ran around in the castle together. But he treats Ophelia as if she's just an object and certainly not a friend. And he says to her dad, basically, like, be careful she doesn't get pregnant. It's really mean-spirited. It's disrespectful. The fact that he even starts by saying, "Do you have a daughter?" when he knows that Polonius has a daughter, he knows this woman really well. All of that reveals he is embittered to an extreme degree about relationships in his life, and especially the ones that could afford him intimacy, a sense of trust. None of that is on the table for him right now. And his puns are just one way that he reveals that bitterness, a duplicity, an inability to engage in honest talk. Puns are unique because they're intentional. They're intentional, duplicitous moments. You can't make a pun without knowing you are. Well, you can, I suppose, when people say no pun intended, but not here. And so he's on purpose being duplicitous. And that's fine and well if his goal is to be clever, but it's not good for his long-term relationships. So I'm really interested in this, and I think that this would make a good claim paragraph, and now I got to piece that together. All right, so here's more of my thinking. You don't have to read this, but you can press pause. It's just me thinking on the page, but of course I just did that in the video too. So I'm looking at my analysis, I'm commenting on it, connecting to my claim. He's angry at Claudius, doesn't trust him, he's overburdened. And down here, he's annoyed with Polonius and disrespectful to Ophelia. So what am I noticing in my own thoughts that I can make into a claim? These words, angry, doesn't trust, annoyed, crude remarks, disrespectful. All of this put together brings me to this place, my claim. I'm only going to read the claim, not the whole thing. Hamlet cannot build intimacy in relationships. Perhaps always inclined to inquisition and suspicion, he is now confirming that people are innately deceitful and two-timing. That's my claim. I don't even bring in figurative language yet, and I will, but the idea is more important. Everything is subordinate to it. And then I get into my commentary, trying to formalize what I've just thought out loud here on the video. I encourage you to press pause, read the entire thing that I've written. I'm just looking at it now and noticing I didn't cite the lines, and that's okay for an essay like this. You don't have to cite on your essays that you write in the exam either. All right, so good luck. I am excited to see what you have made, and I'm going to go ahead and offer my feedback on these specifically for you because we're going to use it to get back into those timed essays that you wrote last week. But all of that is for later. For now, just enjoy writing the paragraph. All right, little things, last things. I have my paragraph I wrote. I want you to see that already I am thinking about what else I could say if this were a full essay. I'm thinking about how this is hypocritical. I could build a whole paragraph about Hamlet's hypocriticism, hypocrisy. He accuses others of duplicity, but he's guilty of it everywhere. I also think it's interesting that there's an important counterclaim, Horatio. Hamlet actually trusts him. So I'm saying with confidence he doesn't trust anybody, but I know that's not entirely true. And that's okay. So if as you make your claim, you have that edge where you think, I almost disagree with myself, that's a good sign. It means you're building complexity, and you could use that later in a full essay. And of course, that's what the best essays and even books do. They have multiple points that are always competing to see which one will out, which one will win. So I'm already seeing that in my own analysis, and I just have it in my mind. I'm not going to write that essay, but I know I could. The implication I would explore is that you cannot build a life without intimacy. If Hamlet keeps this up, he'll disintegrate completely. He must find someone to trust. So I can see already the shape of a potential essay, beginning with the claim that I just revealed, moving into hypocrisy, landing on my counterclaim, and at the end wondering, is there anybody for Hamlet? Or is this whole thing truly a tragedy? All right, you don't have to do that part, but I just wanted you to see my thinking there. You're done. Grammar and Craft, I'm going to post this separately. It's about a little thing I want you to pay attention to in your organization paragraphs.